answers. This is a time that we felt like we really need to address some mental things that people deal with during this pandemic. Make sure that everyone remains mentally healthy and everything during this season. And so we want it to be relevant to where everybody is. So the first week we just dealt with anxieties. Last week we dealt with depression and grief. And this week we're going to deal with mindfulness and more, dealing with some tools and techniques that would help people direct their thoughts and remain calm during anxious moments and things of that sort. And so we want to take a moment to have all of our panelists to introduce themselves. Of course, I'm Quelan Portley. I'm the host from the Sanctuary of Dallas, but I want to start with Dr. Angela.
Yes, I'm Dr. Angela Scott Mason. I am a therapist practicing in Dallas and also South Lake. And thank you guys for having me here again.
Great, great. We have a special, well, here comes Mr. Cleveland from one of our normal panelists. If you're right on time, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody before we get to our special guest.
No problem. Hey everybody, how you doing? Sorry for the delay. I've been sitting on the wrong link for quite some time. So I'm here and happy to contribute once again.
Okay, great. And so we have a special guest added tonight. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Is that me?
Yes.
I'm Vivian Scott. I am also a practicing LPC. I work out of the Las Colinas area, and I am so happy to be here today.
Great, great. I'm so glad to have all of you. We're going to just dive right on in. I'm going to ask a few questions and you just respond. Okay. Can you tell me, what is mindfulness? What is mindfulness?
Yeah, so mindfulness is a state of being aware of the here and now, what is present, happening in front of you, being aware of your current thoughts, present feelings, current senses, in a non-judgmental approach. So during the state of mindfulness, you'll notice all those thoughts and feelings, the physical sensations, but the goal isn't to clear your mind or stop thinking about those things. It's more to be aware of them. The second component of that is just accepting what you feel. So after noticing those thoughts and those feelings, just a non-judgmental approach to acknowledging them. So for instance, if you are feeling that nervous feeling, just stating, I notice I'm feeling nervous. At that point, it's no need to further judge or try to change what is happening.
Yes, I agree with that. You know, most of the time we walk around thinking about what happened in the past, what if, and what's going to happen in the future. So mindfulness is just about bringing yourself back to what's happening right now. It's a myth that we can multitask. You're either thinking about this or you're thinking about that. You're either doing this well or you're half doing it both, and you're half doing something else in addition.
Yes.
Great. Mr. Cleveland?
No, that's good. They actually answered it, and for the second not being redundant, I'll wave to the next question. It's good.
Okay, great. The next question is meditation the same as mindfulness?
Well, I'll start to chime in here. Meditation is a technique using mindfulness for the most part. There's going to be, I don't want to overwhelm those who are listening, but when we're dealing with mindfulness, we also cross over into something called grounding as well. And I know we don't have enough time to deal with both, but I want to make everyone aware of that term, because a lot of times we use both of these terms, even though they're very different, but within the same framework if we're trying to work with a particular client. And so meditation is a type of mindfulness as well, because it allows one, like Doc said, to be aware and to know what's going on with themselves. And for question's sake, Apostle, are we going to be, do you mind if me and the rest of the clinicians do some, take some time to do some actual mindfulness activities with everyone tonight? I know you discussed that.
Yes, that's exactly what I want.
Okay, go ahead.
So,
Great.
so if I were to, yeah, I agree that meditation is one of the tools in the mindfulness toolbox. I think meditation it can be active or it can be preventative, because if you start your day off meditating, it brings you into reality. You're not thinking about the type of shoes or whether or not you're going to the party or even people. You're thinking about, during meditation, what's real, what's in my life, what my connection is. So it's just one thing that you can use two different ways.
Mhm. And I would like, as Christians, we often get turned off by the term meditation because of where we think it comes from. But, it is a general word that just means a deep thinking state or a deep state of thinking. And yes, while other religions or spiritualities may use it, we can meditate in our Christian beliefs. So
Absolutely.
we often get turned off by the term meditation because we think that it's solely connected with another form of religion or spirituality, but that is not true. It is just that deep state of thinking.
That's good. Okay. What are some other mindfulness techniques?
Okay, so
Yeah.
you want to start?
Well, what I was going to say at this moment, Doc, so we can make sure we get enough time in for everybody.
Yeah.
You want us to pick one apiece and then do it with the whole group? You kind of do a round
Um,
robin?
how about that? That's fine. We can do it that way.
Okay.
Well, so up on top of different exercises, it's a lot of mindsets too.
Mm-hmm.
It's being non-judgmental, as I think Dr. Dr. Angela said. It's being patient. It's trusting in your own intuition, as opposed to letting your mind flow to what is this person gonna think and what is that person gonna think. And so it's mind. It's controlling your mind and your thoughts, bringing them back to reality. And even the tools, the other techniques, there are techniques where you walk, and as you walk, you do in a certain way, just to remind yourself you can focus. It's it can be a breathing technique. I can breathe in God's love, and I can breathe out anxiety. I can play any number of games with myself if I found that they're useful for letting me just relax the tension, the stress.
And before we actually dive into a technique, Mr. Cleveland and Ms. Scott, I would like to just, I would like to point out the fact that even though we will do an exercise tonight, this is a skill. So when we first started on our jobs, we were not as proficient as we are 2 years in, a year in, 6 months in. When we first
Right.
started parenting, we learned additional skills to help us do it more proficiently. So this is a skill, and even though we will practice some techniques tonight, I do want to say there are ways you can practice. And so, like Mrs. Scott pointed out, taking the mindfulness walk. And so I guess right here would be a good time to just talk about what that means, since I'm talking about them as practice tools. If it's always going to be paying attention to, you have 5 senses, paying attention to each of them, okay? So what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you taste, and what you smell. That can be done on a walk, it can be done sitting in your homes, it can be done on a drive, anywhere you are, those things that can be done. And so, like Ms. Scott said, the reasons those things work is because our brains cannot give full attention to more than one thing at a time. So if we're giving full attention to what we see, hear, smell, and taste and feel, then we're not giving that attention to all of those things that are flooding us, and bringing the negative energy in at that time. So then I guess at this point, I guess we can start with maybe
And let me
one.
add one thing, Doc, from Roll. I want to piggyback on Doc and say this. You know, this whole platform um, is about understanding our walks as a Christian, as
Mhm.
well as understanding how mental health and being mentally healthy all plays together. So, as a personal example of mindfulness for me, and I actually learned this from a non-Christian environment by reading about habits of CEOs. So, in the morning, a mindfulness activity, of course, is being one with nature or getting in contact with nature, as Doc was saying. Every morning, if I can help it, I do my cardio every morning, but I do my cardio outside. And because of where I live, I don't take my phone if I can help it. Major reason why. I realize the phone at the end of the day is a distraction, no
Yes.
matter how we want to get it. So if I open up my phone and start checking my emails, it's over. If I open up my phone and happen to push that little bitty blue F, it's
Mhm.
definitely over.
Yeah.
With that little camera, it's definitely over. And so what happens is I scroll, and even though God wanted to talk to me, even though I needed to think about my day, think about my week, I have now flooded my mind with the opinions, the feelings and emotions of hundreds of other people before God even got to talk to me. And so
Mhm.
that's just kind of a practical example of what I actually do. So I do mindfulness every morning. I had to get a habit, of course, of trying to become more healthy. So every morning, if I take my phone with me, it's a struggle because I'm used to picking it up.
Mhm.
But when I do not take my phone with me, I know that's difficult for some people because of your job, your kids. But if you have to take it with you while you're outside taking your walk, whatever you're going to do, please try your best to put it on do not disturb, except for your family or emergencies. Because those quiet times in the morning is when I do get my best clarity, period. And it starts my day on
Yes.
another tip. So that's my practical example of kind of what Doc was talking about being mindful. And well as Mrs. Scott, you cannot hear me very clearly. Look at Facebook, Instagram, check your emails, and ask God for clarity on your day
Yes.
and week at the same time.
Right.
It's not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because
You
you've
can only do
made
one
your
thing.
because you've made your choice
Mhm.
about what's important in your life. If you have to pick up the phone, then God, your phone is your God.
Yes.
So we need to, I think that's another mindfulness tool is when you get angry, when you get sad, we as Christians have a tool. We can turn to a scripture, we can turn to God and say, clarify this, what's going on? So, you know, improving our walk, improving our talk, and improving our relationship with God is a mindfulness tool that we have access to all the time. The whole purpose of reading the Bible and reading the scriptures is so that when you start shaking because they say, somebody tells you a rumor about this, you can say, God works all things to good, has promised me that I will never be harmed, that 1,000 can fall on my right and 10,000 on my left. Those are things that bring us back to reality, because the newspaper, you know, they say since 9/11 that there is 4 times as many negative messages coming out to us as before 9/11. And that's because probably they decided they wanted to sell antidepressants and all of that, you know, after that, because I'm sure after 9/11, all the medications that seemed to soothe went up. And so they've continued that. And so we have to be in charge of calming ourselves and soothing ourselves and finding a hobby that helps us. Or I think it was the last, is that Cleveland?
Yes, ma'am.
That was, or maybe, I'm sorry, maybe Dr. Angela, that was talking about paying attention to things, but we can stop ourselves and listen to what another person says without judging. We can just simply stop ourselves from the little chatter that's in our head for a half a minute and just listen to what they're really saying. Look at their voice, think about them. And that's another way to be mindful in a situation.
I can appreciate Ms. Scott, what she said about, you know, in dwelling ourselves and pouring into ourselves the word and other positive information. If you think about it like this, garbage in, garbage out. Whatever we pour into ourselves, that's what will come out when we are least conscious and we're not as aware. So we have to be mindful about what we're putting into our bodies, what we hear, what we are seeing, and those things, because what happens is that exudes out of us with anxiety and the feeling depressed or distressed mood. So it's very important to be aware of this, the idea of mindfulness or any type of technique for managing your mood does not start when you're distressed. It starts before that. So it starts by pouring into yourself. We can be our own bullies sometimes. We talk about bullying, and we often think of that as an external person. But we are our worst bullies because of what we tell ourselves about ourselves in times when we're already down. And so in order to combat that, pouring the word into ourselves, positive affirmations of things that that we know to be true about ourselves, that we've heard other people tell us that are positive, surrounding ourselves with people who are positive, reading positive materials. So it doesn't just start when the anxiety is high. It's gonna be a memory, a emotional memory, similar to muscle memory, kind of an emotional memory thing. If we're pouring that into ourselves, then it's easier for us to pull from it when we need it.
Yes. The Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what's most abundant in your heart is going to come out of your mouth. And although there are several different things that can be there, you want to make sure what is dominant is going to be what's going to flow out of you. Are there any other techniques that you want to share or go through?
Let's do it, Doc.
Okay, all right. So for the first technique, remember there are some things you can practice, and we talked about the mindfulness walk as a practice tool. But one way that I actually have even used with my 7-year-old is guided imagery. And so you do start with just being aware of yourself. So everybody can do this. I want you to close your eyes, because remember, we're going to control the information that we receive. So everyone, close your eyes, and now, while your eyes are closed, I want you to pay attention to the position of your feet, whether they're propped up on the floor, are they laying flat? Just pay attention to how they're positioned. Are they in the same position, different positions? Now I want you to pay attention to how your legs are either stretched out or bent at the knees. If the left leg is different from the right, just noticing that, not suggesting you move them, just noticing how they are positioned. Now I want you to pay attention to how your hands are lying, whether they're on your knees, laying beside you, folded. And if your mind begins to wander, which it will, I want you to bring it back to your sense of feel. Right? Imagine what the temperature in the room feels like. Right? Is it warm to you? Is it cold to you? Just right. Now think about what you hear. So there's the sound of my voice. If there are any other noises around you, just noticing them. Now I want you to pay attention to what you might be tasting. I don't know if you just ate or if you ate a while ago, but the taste in your mouth, what is that? What is that like? I want you to open your eyes, and I want you to pick one thing that you see, and I want you to start going through your mind, describing that thing in detail. Now, as you do that, I want you to think about what ocean sounds sound like. You hear in and out crashing. I want you to imagine what that might look like. Color might the water be? So is it a dark blue or turquoise blue? Is it blue at all? I want you to imagine what the weather in that setting might be like. Is it a beautiful sunny day? Are there clouds in the sky? Is there a breeze? Now what's under your feet? So are you on concrete or sand? Is that sand wet or dry? Is it warm or hot? So that's just one way you can control or focus on being mindful. So notice I started out with just the here and now. Body scan is kind of what that is called. It's another way of practicing. And then move to guided imaging, finding a place. I use ocean sounds because our brains very much communicate by brain waves. And the ocean waves are similar to what our brain waves are like when we are in a relaxed state. So that's why water and things like that of that nature, that's why they are often calming to most people. And so that was brief. Usually when I'm doing this with someone, it's anywhere from 10, 15, 20 minutes that we're doing this. So that was just a brief example. If you are interested in something like that for a longer period of time, they do have what they call guided imagery techniques that you can look up on YouTube that would take you through a longer length of that in order to for it to be more effective.
That's good. Another one?
I can go
Mr.
unless
Brown?
Ms. Scott want to go first.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We're going to do some positive affirmations.
Mhm.
Always a good one for mindfulness. I do a lot of positive affirmations when I'm working with individuals who have, are trying to work through a myriad of things. In particular, self-doubt, which is one we Doc talked about when you're bullying yourself. Self-doubt is good. Depression, things we've talked about over the past couple of weeks. Even anxiety, I use positive affirmations for all of those things. And so, for everyone that's on the line, over the next couple of moments, for about the next 30 seconds, I want you all, I'm going to ask two different questions. One, the first one will be to find one thing that you feel is positive about yourself. Okay? One thing that you feel is positive about yourself. All right. Next 15 to 30 seconds, one thing you feel is positive about yourself. And it'll start off such as I am this or that. Let's do it that way. That'll be an easy format. All right. If you have gotten that, the second thing is a positive affirmation of name something that you want to become, something wonderful and positive that you want to become. Okay. Another few seconds to write that. Something that you want to become. All right. For those of you who are still writing, that's fine. What I want to do is at least pick 3 volunteers out of those who are here, if you don't mind. Do we have anyone willing? I see a couple of my friends on here, so I'm not going to say their names. But do we have any volunteers, at least 2 or 3, who are willing to say what they said about themselves, who they are, as far as a positive affirmation?
You can unmute your mic if you want to volunteer.
Mhm.
Is there one?
I'll go.
All right, we're ready for you. What positive thing about what you are?
I am a considerate wife.
That's good. That's good. Do we have another?
I am a creative person.
That's beautiful. And one more. One more.
Is there another?
Apostle, I'm gonna call on you. Apostle, I'm gonna call on you.
Caring.
After Lucy. Go ahead.
I am caring.
Okay.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Apostle, you mind sharing yours?
I am strong.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to go to the second one. Okay. This is what do you want to be? All right. If you don't mind, Apostle, can you start us off one more time, please, with what you want to be?
I want to be a leader of a children's home.
Oh, that's a blessing. All right. Can we get another what you want to be?
I want to be a pianist.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. One more.
I want to be an international consultant.
No doubt. No doubt. And our third one, the magic lucky number. Do we have a third one who doesn't mind sharing what they want to be? One more brave soul.
I want to be happily retired.
Oh, that's beautiful. All right.
Right?
So with those things, this is how you implement positive affirmations. Now, there's a million ways. There's no right or wrong way. Now, how I have my clients implement them is I tell them to put them on sticky notes. I am a sticky note advocate. Okay, you can put it on anything, but it needs to be somewhere where you have to see it every single day. The places that I get my clients to put their sticky notes is on a bathroom mirror, okay, or behind a door, like the door where they're going to leave. For instance, the individual who said they want to be happily retired. That's definitely something you want to see right before you walk out that door, especially if you don't know how the day's work day is going to be. You woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Before you leave out that door saying, I want to be happily retired, can believe it or not, that positive affirmation there can give you the jolt to say, no matter what, I'm getting through the day.
Absolutely.
So, okay, right on. So that's just an example, but truthfully, research says you need at least 20 days to learn a new habit, okay? But you got to do something consistently for at least 20 days to possibly learn a new habit. And so I do positive affirmations. I make people say them when they're up in the morning, before they go to bed, or whatever opportune time it is, every single day over the course of a month for me when it comes to my clients, in hopes that they can begin to automatically say them again. And the thing about it is, you say what you are and you say what you're going to be, because the more and more you say these things, you will truly believe them and take them on. More so importantly, the things that you're trying to be, the more so you say them, we want you to truly believe you can become those things. So that's why positive affirmations are very important. And hopefully you guys write some of those things down and say them.
That's good.
I'd just like to say one thing about that. I too, I think I have a, on a little picture there. But when you read it, you have to feel it. You have to feel it every time you say it. There's a thing that people do where they say, oh, I've got this lemon and it's firm, but as I press it, it's getting juicier. And if I do that right, and I keep on having you plant this visual in your head, by the time I'm finished, your little whatever this is, glands or whatever, will start to kind of tingle. But if I say it in a flat way, oh, this lemon is getting, firm, and, you're doing this and you're doing that, I'll get no reaction. But your body, your mind does not know the difference between this visualization that you believe and if it really was there. And that's why the Olympics has their people training by visualizing and saying this and seeing themselves cross the finish line. So you have to, and it comes with being a Christian too. If I say that all things work together for good, it does not mean some of them. It doesn't mean if I believe it, because gravity works whether you believe it or not, right?
Yeah.
And so do the scriptures work whether you believe them or not. But you have, no, I guess I take that back. They won't, if you don't believe, it won't work. If you don't believe that God can work this situation out to a good outcome, you'll stop too early. You'll get mad and turn away because you're looking at the past and what you've experienced in the past. Stay present, hold on to whatever that affirmation is that you're holding on to, and it will work for you.
One of the ways that I often, when using the technique that Mr. Cleveland talked about, one of the ways, Ms. Scott, that I often encourage my clients to get to the point where they're believing is they have to say it out loud. So not only do you read it, but you see it to read it, you hear it coming, it comes out of your mouth, and then you hear what you're saying. And so each time you read that, you're reading it 3 times every time, but you're reading it out loud and with conviction. So that is one way that you can use those affirmations to get to the point where, like Ms. Scott said, you are believing them. Those work as well. Like when doing the guided imagery technique, our minds are going to wander. They often wander, and sometimes, especially if you're one who struggle with having a lot of negative thinking, those affirmations, plugging them in where that negative thinking is, and then bringing yourself back to being aware of what you're doing, like your body and whatever visual place you're taken to. So that works in that situation as well. For every one negative thought we think about ourselves, it takes 6 positive thoughts to overcome that negative thought.
Yeah. Is it really possible to control your thoughts?
Absolutely, it is. But I find that replacement is a better path to take than trying to say, no, I'm not weak, I'm not scared, I'm not this. If I say that, I can do many things and I'm courageous in some things, I can do this or I can do that. And so this that's facing me now is not too much, so it's our self-talk has to be cleaned up. We take most of the things that rule our life were inputted to us from age 0, including the arguments that parents had when we were in womb to 7 years old. So this is a life process that has to be undone. If somebody told you trying to help you learn something when you were 4 years old, and they told you, you won't get anywhere if you do it that way. Well, stuck in your head might be that statement that I'm not gonna get this unless I do it somebody else's way. So my statement to myself might have to be, I trust my intuition because God gave me my intuition. I trust it and I watch it and I use it. So I've now not talked about my weakness. I've talked about what I desire and what I believe and what I've practiced, actually seen. We don't pat ourselves on the back enough when we do good things, but let us do something just a little bad. I find in my practice that if I ask people what the problem is, they can go all day long. But if I ask them to tell me what's good about them, or what are their strengths, or what are their talents, they're looking at me like, what?
Absolutely.
And I agree with that. Just as we talked about before, about not being able to multitask, our minds are never idle. So we can't say, I'm going to stop thinking that, because you're going to think something. And so what you essentially do is replace it with another negative thought. So you have to be conscious about what you will think. And it's not suggested, we're not suggesting that you ignore all the negative. We're not suggesting that you lie to yourself about what is. But like Ms. Scott said, we're not all bad, but we're our own bullies. And so we often tell ourselves all the bad things about us. And we never, almost never, or find it hard to talk about what's good about us. And so learning to replace those thoughts with things like affirmations, with things like being real with ourselves. We have this all or nothing thinking sometimes when it comes to if something goes wrong, we kind of shift to that negative end of that scale and say it's always like this. Well, if you really sit and think about it, is it really? And so really being true to ourselves about what is, And that means acknowledging both the positive and the negative. And if you have that healthy balance of understanding, okay, in this moment, I'm having trouble with the homework, but it doesn't mean that I'm always going to have trouble with all of my homework. So just being conscious of how we're talking to ourselves, our children, our spouses. So yes, I do agree. You can absolutely control what you think. I think I mentioned in the last segment, it's not about not experiencing these automatic negative feelings that we have. We're going to experience them. We are human, but we don't have to stay there. And not staying there means talking to ourselves in a different way.
Right. This reminds me, working with children, one of the things that they told us to try to leave out a lot of the negative words. And so just an example, if kids were running in the hallway, we were told, don't tell them, don't run. We were told to tell them, walk. And so they respond better to that, because when you tell them, don't run is really what sticks in their mind. And so they kind of subconsciously want to do that. But when you say walk, it kind of brings them back to, the positive thing that they should be doing versus being punished for something that's negative that they might be doing or whatever. So that was good.
That's another mindfulness tool that I use. I think anxiety and depression hinge a lot from the fact that we have no dreams. So probably 90% of people that come to see me do what's called a 5-year vision, where they look at all the categories, the fitness, they look at the spirituality, they look at family, they look at personal, they look at financial goals, education goals, and all that 5 years ahead to say what I want. Because the brain is a goal-seeking device. That's what God gave it to us for, as a servant, to bring us the things that we desire. And God's wish for us is that we have everything we desire. He only asks that we serve him on a daily basis with love. So if I don't have any place that I'm going, then I'm gonna be distracted by all kinds of nonsense. But if I know that in my future I want to be this or do that or have this, then that keeps me grounded. I won't shake and shiver if the job goes away, because I might realize that God's trying to close one door so it can open up another door. I won't get angry and let somebody else blow my whole work history over something, because I know I've got somewhere I'm trying to go to. So control of anger and anxiety. And that's one other thing. They keep on pushing all these words to us. You're supposed, everybody gets a little anxious sometimes. So you don't need to build on it. You say, oh, like Dr. Angela said, oh, I feel this. It doesn't mean you're diseased or you're going into some terrible spiral. It just means right this second, I'm looking at something that maybe I haven't experienced before or I haven't thought about. But that means nothing, because the next second you can say, yes, I can see where that might be going. So we need to, there, it sounds like you can be positively distracted or negatively distracted. And the most powerful thing that we have to deal with is our choice. And every minute you can choose whether you want to be happy, joyful, or whether you want to pay attention to nonsense. And I'm telling you, God's life and his gifts and his blessings are so good. You don't want to waste your time, going the other direction.
I totally agree with that. When Mr. Cleveland would approach the positive affirmations, one of the reasons why he chose the two things that he chose were because the things that we should be encouraging ourselves with should not be those tangible things that are contingent upon our surroundings. They should be the things that speak to who we are as Christians and as people. And if we remind ourselves and believe that, our behaviors tend to follow. Because when we pour that into ourselves, then we act accordingly. And so yes, and that's another way. You asked if we could change our thoughts. That is another way, because instead of all of these circumstances around us that may be wavering, if we've affirmed ourselves of these things, that will be the first thing that comes to mind. Then it will be more about problem solving skills as far as how to reach those goals, as opposed to, oh, my life was wrapped up in that job and now that job is not there. What am I going to do?
Yeah, that's good. It's you know what, this kind of reminds me of the whole message of Jesus, how from the Old Testament to the New Testament, Old Testament was more about what not to do, but then Jesus comes in the New Testament and he switches everything, and all of his sermons are about what we can do, what we should be doing, versus focusing on everything that we shouldn't be doing, sin. And I tell people often, I'm like, if you keep preaching messages about sin, you make people want to go sin. So you should preach messages about what people can do and feel good about doing what God encourages us to do versus what he tells us not to do. So yeah, I like this.
Yeah, they've actually done studies that show that the average person knows what he doesn't want, but has no clue to what he does want.
Yeah.
So we have to concentrate on, choosing and going for what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I have one more question I want to ask, and then we'll open up the panel. How can a person change thought patterns regarding a stressful event or memory?
I'll jump in there. I'll start it off. Okay. So this type of person, I do something called CBT. That's kind of my focus. I do cognitive therapy. And so it focuses on changing the way you think. So if you change the way you think, it influences, of course, you'll begin to behave and act differently overall. And so if we want to make a tangible example, these positive affirmations, these mindfulness activities, these are all things that can go into place with literally changing the way you think. Now, here's the thing with changing the way you think and being mindful about it. When you're mindful about changing your thoughts, that means you have to be intentional about it. And the thing about being intentional is an action word. And so it takes effort. And I think that's how, of course, we can sometimes get a little tired on our way to healing and on our way to improving the quality of our life. But for those of you who do truly feel in a rut about the way you think and you want to change, it can be done with a lot of positive affirmations, a lot of positive reinforcement. This is definitely a place where you should seek out professional help, and you have to truly get yourself away from all of those sources that previously had you thinking in that negative manner, any of those triggers. So you want to, of course, make your first step today. If you don't have any professional help around you, no one positive around you, your first step is to get away from all those triggers that will allow that are keeping you thinking the way you are, so you can change your thoughts around and live renewed, which of course is our theme as human beings and Christians, truly renewing our mind to think differently. So yes, it can be done.
I often when this is often the strategy for one coming for treatment, because the first thing is people have to be aware of what is causing, or maybe if not necessarily causing, what may be keeping these thoughts in place. So sometimes it can be the cause, and sometimes it can just be keeping in place all the negative things that we already think about ourselves. So reinforcing those things for us. So the first thing I tell people is think about, as you go through the week, as much as you can, be aware of all the negative things that have come up. Because you have to understand where it's coming from first before you. The first step to changing anything is to be aware of what it is that you need to change. So once you're aware of that, then you can start working on, little by little, how are they impacting me? How are these negative things that I'm hearing or seeing or doing, how are they impacting my life? And really doing that self-assessment. Once that is done, what do I want to be different? And so there are these steps, right? We can often say I want to change, but there are these steps to getting to that change. Once you realize what you want to be different, setting small, measurable goals is the key. Small, measurable goals to making that different for yourself. One of the reasons they need to be small is because we need to reinforce to ourselves that we can do this. The reason they need to be measurable is because if I can't measure how successful I am, how will I know it's working?
Yeah.
If your first approach doesn't work, it's okay. It's finding another way. That first approach didn't work. How else can I approach this? Now that's a long process, and it's doable. If you find it's overwhelming to do on your own, like Mr. Cleveland said, absolutely reach out for help with someone who can keep you accountable along the way and help you walk through that process.
That's good.
They say that book sales have gone up 130% since COVID came in. Another thing about change is that you have to saturate yourself in the new. You can't have one foot on one side and another foot on another side. You've got to, once you become aware that you have a problem and want to change and what it sort of looks like, you need to know even more what it looks like. There's an Indian fable that says a little boy was talking to his grandfather and said, "Grandfather, there are two wolves fighting in my head. Which one is going to win?" And the grandfather says, "The one that you feed." So we need to feed this side that we want to be, because you can be pretty powerful when you're angry.
Yeah.
Depression will get you out of more stuff. You don't have to come out of your room and wash the dishes. If you're addicted, you don't have to show up for the family reunion. So there are benefits to all the negative sides, and you've got to be willing and ready to give up that and take on the new. So reading is a long-term mindfulness tool that helps you to grow to what you want to do and be.
I will also take it back to, you mentioned reading. Let us not forget that finding a scripture. So I talked about meditation. Christians can meditate too. Finding a scripture that speaks to you at any given moment and meditating on that scripture, really sitting down and thinking about what that means to you at this time, how that speaks to you, and really sitting and spending time with that and hearing God, because that too can also be, and that is also a form of meditation. And so that too can be useful. So, while you're reading, while you're trying to embark upon something new and better for your life, really using your faith to help you. I mean, God wants us to ask him for anything. big or small, right? So even if it is, I want to get up earlier in the morning, ask him for it, right? Set those small measurable goals and have him ask him for that will to take those steps to get there. So using our faith as well to help us as we use these tools.
That's good.
That's good.
Let's go ahead and open up for questions. We're getting to the end of the time frame, so let's go ahead. If you have a question and you're on within this, you can unmute your microphone and ask the question verbally. If you're on another platform, you can post the question, and then we will address your question as it comes through. Is there one?
Yeah, hi everyone. I had a comment or a piggyback off of a statement that was made early in the session concerning a lack of desire or fear to practice mindfulness or meditation with Christians. And so something that I found as I have begun to practice mindfulness is that there are platforms and people who make Christian guided meditations and mindfulness practices available for Christians. And so that's something that you can reassure people with who are leery of practicing mindfulness. Just let them know that there are resources available for Christians that facilitate that.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Is there another comment or question? Anybody? One person? Well, thank God for a well house again.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah.
Is there anything anyone wants to say before we wrap it up?
I just want to thank the panelists for the last couple of weeks for their diligence and effort and intentionality to provide information and resources and tools for us to make sure that we're well during this crisis and just in general in our lives. So I definitely appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And that was
definitely thank, of course, to everybody who's tuned in every single week. It's been amazing sharing these things with you. And thank you, Apostle and Andrea and Elise for pushing this on through. It's much needed on this type of platform. So me and Doc have had a wonderful time.
Absolutely.
Could I say something?
Yeah.
You know, when you're reading, when you're going to a lecture or something, it's very important to do something with the information that you take in.
Yeah.
There is so much information out here that stuff is going in one ear and out one ear so fast. Even them asking you the question, do you have any questions? There's something in your head, either a comment or a question, that if you gave it, if you shared it, it will solidify something in your head. And that's important. They know that in 24 hours, 50%, I believe probably 70% of what you've heard today will be gone. It'll be lost in they say we have 40,000 to 90,000 thoughts a day. So if you don't put one little question out there, one little comment out there, it'll be a period to something that's in your head. So use the information in some way to tell somebody else, to ask a question, to make a comment. Thanks.
That's good. Thank you once again, everyone. Dr. Angela, Mr. Cleveland, Mrs. Vivian. Thank you all for joining us and helping all of us, because we all have problems. The Bible, the Bible says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So I always tell people, you gotta get things going on up here. You gotta get them right. So thank God for you all being ministers of God to help us get our minds right. Is there any other comments? Go ahead.
And one more thing, everyone, thank you so much for sharing that information. If you can, I do have a new online series that kind of talks to a lot of the things we've been talking about, anxiety, depression, so forth on. It's called Conversations with Cleveland. And so the best way to see most of my information is always on social media. Like that's one of our biggest mediums. So Conversations with Cleveland. It's an IGTV series as well as on my Facebook page. It comes out every single Monday. So I do focus on a lot of these same issues. And please share it. It's a series that I want to see grow. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Oh, how to find me is at Real Soul Ambassador if you want to find it. At Real Soul Ambassador. That's where all my stuff is, Facebook or Instagram. One S off of there, Real Soul Ambassador, and that's where the Conversations with Cleveland is. So please tune in on Mondays.
Cool, and all of their information has been posted. So if you need to talk to any of them, get in for treatment or session or whatever, do reach out to them. It is a great thing for Christian people to go and get psychotherapy. Thank you. Thank you for everything. And we will let you know when we have another session. Thanks once again. Thanks everybody for tuning in. God bless all.
Thank you.
Yeah.